Maya Thompson was not your typical CEO. She had broken barriers to become the first black woman to lead Apex Tech, a company known for its cutting-edge technology and sleek corporate offices in downtown Chicago. But despite her success, Maya often felt like something was missing. Sure, she had the corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows, the tailored suits, and the admiration of her peers, but deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't fully understand what life was like for the people who kept the company running behind the scenes. One evening, as she stayed late at the office reviewing quarterly reports, Maya decided to grab a cup of coffee from the break room. On her way back, she overheard two janitors chatting near the supply closet. Their voices were low, but their frustration was clear. One of them mentioned how they hadn't received a raise in years, while the other complained about being ignored when they reported safety issues. Maya paused mid-step, her coffee mug halfway to her lips. These weren't just idle complaints. They sounded like real problems, ones she hadn't even considered before. At first, she dismissed it as an isolated gripe. After all, Apex Tech prided itself on being progressive and employee-friendly. The company offered generous benefits, flexible hours, and even hosted wellness workshops. How could there be serious issues lurking beneath the surface? But the conversation stuck with her. Over the next few days, she found herself reading articles online about workplace inequality, many of which highlighted disparities between executive teams and frontline workers. Some stories specifically called out tech companies like hers for paying lip service to diversity without addressing systemic challenges faced by lower-wage employees. The more Maya read, the more unsettled she became. Was Apex Tech part of the problem too? She wanted answers, but asking directly wouldn't work. People might sugarcoat their responses or avoid speaking honestly if they knew it was coming from the CEO. That's when inspiration struck. What if she went undercover, not as herself but as someone completely unassuming, someone no one would suspect? The idea seemed absurd at first, a CEO pretending to be a janitor. But the longer she thought about it, the more intrigued she became. If she could see the company through the eyes of its most overlooked employees, maybe she'd finally understand what was really going on. It wasn't just curiosity driving her, it was guilt. Guilt for not knowing sooner, guilt for assuming everything was fine because the numbers looked good on paper. With determination bubbling inside her, Maya began making preparations. She dyed her dark hair a lighter brown and swapped her designer blazers for baggy jeans and plain t-shirts. She practiced walking hunched over, trying to appear less confident and more reserved. For weeks, she studied videos of cleaning routines and memorized industry jargon so she wouldn't stand out once she started. Her heart raced every time she thought about stepping into this unfamiliar world, but she pushed forward anyway. Finally, the day arrived. Dressed in her disguise, Maya introduced herself as Maria, a new hire eager to learn the ropes. The head of the janitorial team greeted her warmly, handing her a mop and bucket without a second glance. As she followed along silently, Maya noticed how quickly people dismissed her presence. Executives breezed past her without acknowledgement, leaving trash cans overflowing outside their offices. Employees chatted loudly about weekend plans, oblivious to the fact that she was standing right there scrubbing floors. No one suspected that this quiet cleaner was actually the person signing their paychecks. By the end of her first shift, Maya's arms ached and her shoes were soaked from mopping spills. But physical exhaustion wasn't what weighed heaviest. On her mind, it was the realization that she had been invisible. For years, she had walked these same hallways, commanding respect and attention wherever she went. Now, as Maria, she was nothing more than a shadow. And yet, she couldn't help but feel oddly liberated. Without the pressure of being the CEO, she saw things she never would have noticed before. The camaraderie among the janitors, the subtle ways they supported each other, and the quiet pride they took in keeping the building spotless. As she clocked out that night, Maya knew this experiment was only beginning. She had stepped into a different world, one where titles meant nothing and hard work spoke louder than words. But what she didn't realize yet was that this journey would change her, not just as a leader, but as a person. Little did she know, the discoveries waiting for her were far bigger than she ever imagined. Maya's second week as Maria started with a jolt, or rather the screech of a mop bucket being wheeled down the hallway at midnight. She had quickly learned that the janitorial team worked in shifts, starting long after most office employees left for the day. It was a world that operated in silence, away from the buzz of meetings and keyboard clicks. As she pushed her cart full of cleaning supplies, Maya realized how much effort went into maintaining the pristine appearance of Apex Tech's headquarters. Every corner wiped, every trash can emptied. It all fell on the shoulders of people who rarely got thanked. Her first task that night was to clean the executive floor. This was familiar territory for her, though now it felt completely foreign. She recognized the polished wooden doors of the conference rooms where she'd led high-stakes negotiations. The plush carpets underfoot were the same ones she'd paced across while brainstorming strategies with her team. But tonight, instead of commanding attention, she blended into the background like wallpaper. Executives occasionally passed by, chatting casually about stock prices or upcoming vacations, never once acknowledging her presence. One man even dropped a candy wrapper right next to her mop bucket and walked off without a backward glance. Maya bit back her frustration, reminding herself that this was part of the experiment. As the hours ticked by, Maya found herself falling into step with another janitor, a woman in her late 30s with kind eyes and calloused hands. They exchanged nods as they worked side by side, mopping different sections of the hallway. Eventually, the woman broke the silence. "First week?" she asked, nodding toward Maya's slightly awkward grip on the mop handle. "Yeah," Maya replied, keeping her tone light. "Still figuring things out?" The woman chuckled softly. "Don't worry, you'll get the hang of it. Just don't let anyone take advantage of you. Some of these folks think we're invisible." That comment lingered in Maya's mind long after their brief conversation ended. Invisible. Was that how everyone saw them? Over the next few days, Maya began noticing small interactions that confirmed what the woman had said. Employees would toss trash near bins instead of inside them, leaving extra work for the janitors. A manager snapped impatiently when someone accidentally bumped into him while carrying a broom. Even maintenance requests seemed to go unanswered unless Maya reported them multiple times. It was as if the janitorial staff existed only to serve, their humanity erased by the demands of the corporate machine. But it wasn't just indifference that troubled Maya. It was the struggles her co-workers faced outside of work. During breaks, she sat with the team in the dimly lit break room, listening intently as they shared pieces of their lives. One older man talked about working 2 jobs to cover his daughter's medical bills. Another younger worker confessed he dreamed of going back to school, but couldn't afford tuition while supporting his aging parents. Each story painted a picture of resilience but also hardship. Hardship Maya had never truly considered before. One particular conversation stood out. A young woman sitting across from Maya mentioned wanting to switch careers. "I've always been interested in coding," she said shyly, fiddling with the edge of her uniform shirt. "But I can't risk losing this job, you know? My family depends on me." Maya felt a pang of sadness mixed with admiration. Here was someone with ambition and talent, held back not by lack of skill but by circumstances beyond her control. In that moment, Maya understood something profound. The gap between the C-suite and frontline workers wasn't just about paychecks, it was about opportunity. While executives climbed higher up the ladder, many janitors remained stuck on the bottom rung, unable to reach for something better. Things came to a head one evening when Maya witnessed a supervisor berating a janitor for spilling coffee in the break room. The poor guy looked mortified, apologizing repeatedly as the supervisor loomed over him, voice rising louder with each word. "This is why I can't trust you people," the supervisor barked, gesturing angrily at the mess. "You're supposed to clean up, not make more work." Maya froze, gripping her mop tightly. Her instincts screamed at her to intervene, to remind the supervisor that mistakes happen and that yelling solved nothing. But she hesitated, remembering her cover. If she spoke up now, it might blow her disguise. Still, Watching the scene unfold made her blood boil. When the supervisor finally stormed off, Maya approached the shaken janitor quietly. "You okay?" she asked gently, handing him a towel. He nodded, though his face remained flushed with embarrassment. "Thanks," he muttered. "It's fine. Happens all the time. All the time." Those 3 words echoed in Maya's mind as she returned to her duties. How often had similar incidents occurred without anyone speaking up? How many voices had been silenced by fear of retaliation or dismissal? For the first time since becoming CEO, Maya questioned whether she had done enough to protect her employees, not just those in suits, but everyone who contributed to the company's success. By the end of her second week undercover, Maya's perspective had shifted dramatically. She no longer saw the janitorial staff as nameless faces blending into the backdrop of the office. They were individuals with dreams, fears, and challenges just like anyone else. And yet, they carried the weight of inequality on their backs every day, often without complaint. As she clocked out that night, Maya couldn't shake the image of the spilled coffee or the defeated look on the janitor's face. She knew she had uncovered only the tip of the iceberg. There were deeper truths waiting to be revealed, and harder questions she needed to ask herself. What kind of leader had she been so far? And more importantly, what kind of leader did she want to become? By the 3rd week of her undercover journey, Maya had settled into a rhythm. She'd learned to navigate the late-night shifts, dodging carts and mopping spills with surprising efficiency. But what truly transformed her experience wasn't mastering the mop. It was the relationship she began forming with her coworkers. Slowly but surely, they started opening up to her, sharing bits and pieces of their lives that painted a vivid picture of resilience, struggle, and quiet determination. One person in particular stood out, a middle-aged man who always seemed to have a smile, even when he was hauling heavy trash bags or scrubbing stubborn stains off the floor. He worked tirelessly, often staying late to help others finish their tasks. One night, during a rare lull, Maya found herself sitting beside him in the break room. The fluorescent lights flickered above them as they sipped lukewarm coffee from paper cups. "You've been doing this a long time, huh?" Maya asked casually, nodding toward his worn work boots. 20 years, he replied with a chuckle. "Started here when my kid was just a baby. Now she's about to graduate college." Maya raised an eyebrow, impressed. "That's amazing. Must be proud of her." He nodded, though his expression softened with a hint of sadness. "Yeah, I am. But it hasn't been easy. You know how it is. Working 2 jobs, juggling bills, trying to keep your head above water. Some days you just gotta remind yourself why you're doing it." His words hit Maya like a punch to the gut. This man had dedicated 2 decades of his life to Apex Tech, yet she doubted anyone in the executive suite knew his name. How many others like him were there? People who showed up day after day, year after year, without recognition or reward. The more Maya listened, the clearer it became that the challenges her coworkers faced weren't isolated incidents. They were systemic. Take Rosa, for example, a young woman who always carried a notebook in her pocket. During breaks, she'd scribble notes furiously, jotting down ideas or sketching diagrams. When Maya finally asked her about it, Rosa hesitated before admitting she wanted to become a software engineer. "I've been teaching myself coding online," Rosa explained, her voice tinged with both excitement and uncertainty. "But it's hard. I can't afford classes, and I barely have time to study between shifts. Sometimes I wonder if it's even worth it." Maya felt a lump form in her throat. Here was someone brimming with potential, eager to grow and contribute, yet held back by circumstances beyond her control. It wasn't fair, and worse, it wasn't unique. Another coworker confided that he'd been denied a promotion 3 times despite glowing performance reviews. "They say I don't have the right qualifications," he muttered bitterly. "But I know guys upstairs got promoted faster than me, and they didn't even finish high school." These conversations gnawed at Maya. As CEO, she prided herself on fostering innovation and opportunity within the company. Yet the reality staring her in the face told a different story. For all its talk of diversity and inclusion, Apex Tech had created invisible barriers that kept certain groups stuck in place while others soared ahead. It wasn't just about promotions or paychecks either. Maya noticed subtle signs of disrespect that added up over time. Employees would leave messes deliberately, assuming janitors would clean up after them. Managers spoke condescendingly, dismissing concerns about safety hazards or equipment shortages. Worst of all, no one seemed to care. Complaints went unheard, suggestions unacknowledged. The message was clear. These workers mattered only as long as they stayed silent and compliant. Then came the incident that pushed Maya to her breaking point. Late one night, she overheard a heated argument near the supply closet. A janitor was pleading with a supervisor to replace a broken vacuum cleaner. "We've been asking for weeks," he said, his voice trembling with frustration. "How are we supposed to do our jobs properly without the right tools?" The supervisor rolled, his eyes crossing his arms. "Stop making excuses. If you can't handle basic cleaning, maybe this job isn't for you." Maya clenched her fists, anger bubbling beneath her calm exterior. She couldn't stay silent any longer. Stepping forward, she interjected firmly, "Excuse me, but he's right. That vacuum's been broken for ages. We shouldn't have to beg for something so simple." The room fell silent. Both the janitor and the supervisor turned to stare at her, startled by her sudden boldness. For a moment, Maya worried she'd blown her cover. But then the janitor shot her a grateful look, and the supervisor grumbled something about filing, a request before walking away. Afterward, the janitor thanked her profusely. "No one ever stands up for us," he said quietly. "You didn't have to do that." Maya smiled, though her heart ached. Someone should. That night, as she trudged home exhausted, Maya replayed the scene in her mind. She realized she couldn't keep pretending to be just another faceless worker. Too much was at stake. Her co-workers deserved better, not just from the company, but from her. As CEO, she had the power to make real change. The question was, would she use it over? The next few days, Maya made a conscious effort to connect with her co-workers even more deeply. She joined them for meals, laughed at their jokes, and listened intently to their stories. Each conversation reinforced her resolve. These weren't just employees, they were people with dreams, talents, and untapped potential. And if Apex Tech truly valued innovation, it needed to invest in all its workers, not just those in suits. By the end of her third week undercover, Maya knew she couldn't stay hidden forever. The truth was too important, the stakes too high. But revealing her identity wouldn't be easy, not after earning her coworkers' trust as Maria. She owed it to them to get it right. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain. Maya Thompson was ready to fight for the people who had been overlooked for far too long. By the fourth week of her undercover journey, Maya felt like she was standing on shaky ground. She had uncovered truths about Apex Tech that shook her to her core, truths she couldn't ignore any longer. But as Maria, she had also built trust with her co-workers, and revealing her true identity now would shatter that bond. The weight of what she'd learned, and the responsibility it carried, pressed down on her every day. One evening, as she mopped the executive floor, Maya noticed a flyer tucked under a stack of papers in the break room. It was an anonymous note, addressed to all janitorial staff. "If you're tired of being treated unfairly, speak up. Someone is listening." Her stomach tightened as she read the words again and again. Rumors had been swirling among the janitors for days about a whistleblower planning to expose Apex Tech's labor practices to the media. No one knew who it was, but the tension in the air was palpable. Maya's mind raced. Was this person someone she had worked alongside? Or worse, was it one of her closest confidants like Rosa or the older man who had shared his story of working 2 jobs to put his daughter through college? Whoever it was, they were desperate enough to risk everything, to bring attention to the injustices within the company. And though Maya admired their courage, she couldn't let it come to that. If the story broke publicly, it could damage not only Apex Tech's reputation but also the livelihoods of the very people trying to fight for change. That night, after clocking out, Maya sat alone in her car, staring at the steering wheel. She had spent weeks learning about the struggles of her co-workers. Their dreams crushed by low wages, their health jeopardized by outdated equipment, their voices silenced by indifference. Now, faced with the possibility of a public scandal, she realized she had no choice but to step forward. But how could she reveal her true identity without losing the trust she had worked so hard to earn? The next morning, Maya called an emergency meeting with her most trusted advisors. When they gathered around the conference table, she dropped a bombshell. "I need you to listen carefully because I'm about to tell you something that might sound unbelievable." For the first time in years, Maya saw genuine shock ripple across their faces as she recounted her undercover experience, from dyeing her hair to scrubbing floors alongside janitors. She laid out everything she had discovered, from systemic pay disparities to toxic workplace culture. By the time she finished, the room was silent. Finally, her CFO spoke up, his voice tinged with disbelief. "You went undercover as a janitor. Why didn't you just conduct an internal audit?" Maya leaned forward, her tone firm. "Because audits don't show you what life is really like for these employees. Numbers on a spreadsheet can't capture the frustration of being ignored when you report a safety hazard, or the exhaustion of working double shifts just to make ends meet. If we want to fix this, we have to start by understanding the problem, not from our perspective, but theirs." Her team exchanged uneasy glances. Some looked skeptical, others seemed ashamed. One of her senior managers finally broke the silence. "What do you propose we do?" Maya took a deep breath. "We overhaul our policies. Starting today, we raise wages for janitorial staff, provide access to healthcare benefits, and create pathways for career advancement. We also launch an initiative to address workplace culture, starting with mandatory training for supervisors on respect and communication." Though her advisors nodded reluctantly, Maya knew implementing these changes wouldn't be easy. There would be pushback from shareholders, resistance from middle management, and logistical hurdles to overcome. But she refused to back down. Apex Tech had prided itself on being innovative, but innovation wasn't just about technology. It was about people. And if the company couldn't take care of its own workforce, then it didn't deserve to call itself progressive. With her plan set in motion, Maya knew it was time to confront the hardest part of her mission, telling her coworkers the truth. That night, she invited Rosa, the older man, and a few other trusted janitors to a quiet corner of the break room. As they gathered, confusion flickered across their faces. "What's going on, Maria?" Rosa asked cautiously. Maya hesitated, searching for the right words. Then, slowly, she reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone, pulling up a photo of herself standing in front of Apex Tech's headquarters during a ribbon-cutting ceremony. "This is me," she said softly. "My real name is Maya Thompson. I'm the CEO of this company." For a moment, there was stunned silence. Then Rosa laughed nervously. "Come on, Maria, that's not funny." "It's not a joke," Maya replied, her voice steady despite the knot in her chest. "I went undercover because I wanted to understand what life was really like for you, for everyone here. I needed to see the problems myself before I could fix them." The older man frowned, crossing his arms. "So what are you saying? You've been lying to us this whole time?" "No," Maya said quickly. "Not lying, just hiding my identity so I could hear your stories without bias. And believe me, hearing them has changed me. I've seen things I never noticed before, things I should have noticed. I failed you as a leader, and I'm sorry." Rosa studied her closely, her expression shifting from suspicion to curiosity. "If you're really the CEO, then prove it. What are you going to do about everything we've told you?" Maya met her gaze squarely. "I'm going to make things right. Starting tomorrow, we're rolling out new policies to improve pay, benefits, and opportunities for growth. I'm also creating programs to help people like you transition into roles that match your skills and ambitions, but I can't do it alone. I need your help to hold me accountable." The group exchanged wary glances. After a long pause, the older man sighed. "Look, I don't know if I trust you yet, but if even half of what you're saying is true, then maybe, just maybe, you're serious about making a difference. It wasn't full forgiveness, but it was a start. Over the next few days, Maya worked tirelessly to follow through on her promises. She held town hall meetings with janitors, inviting them to share their thoughts and concerns directly with her. She partnered with HR to revamp hiring and promotion processes, ensuring fairness and transparency. And perhaps most importantly, she made herself accessible, walking the halls late at night to check in with her coworkers and listen to their feedback. Not everyone believed her at first. Some accused her of staging a PR stunt, while others remained guarded, unwilling to let their guard down. But slowly, attitudes began to shift. When paychecks arrived with higher wages, skepticism gave way to cautious optimism. When broken equipment was replaced and safety protocols updated, gratitude started to replace resentment. Even Rosa, who had initially been the most skeptical, agreed to enroll in a coding boot camp sponsored by the company, a program Maya had fast-tracked specifically for janitorial staff. Through it all, Maya stayed grounded, reminding herself why she had embarked on this journey in the first place. It wasn't about redemption or accolades, it was about doing the right thing. Every late-night conversation, every heartfelt thank you from a coworker, reinforced her belief that leadership wasn't just about power. It was about service, about lifting others up instead of standing above them. By the end of the 4th week, Maya felt a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead wouldn't be smooth, but she was ready to face it head-on. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like an outsider looking in. She felt like part of a team united by a shared vision of what Apex Tech could become. And though challenges still loomed, one thing was certain. Maya Thompson was determined to leave a legacy that went far beyond profits and quarterly reports. Months had passed since Maya revealed her true identity to her coworkers, and the changes she promised were beginning to take root. Apex Tech wasn't perfect, it never would be, but it was undeniably different. The once invisible workforce that kept the company running now had a voice, and Maya made sure everyone listened. She called this new chapter Apex Together, an initiative designed to bridge the gap between executives and frontline workers. It wasn't just a slogan, it was a promise, a commitment to creating a workplace where every employee felt valued, respected, and empowered to grow. One evening, as Maya walked through the office after hours, she noticed something she hadn't seen before. Smiles. Not polite, forced ones, but genuine grins exchanged between coworkers. Janitors joked with IT staff during breaks, sharing stories about their weekends or swapping advice on everything from car repairs to cooking recipes. Supervisors who used to bark orders now greeted people by name, asking how they were doing instead of just assigning tasks. Even the air seemed lighter, less weighed down by tension and mistrust. But perhaps the most meaningful change came in the form of opportunity. Rosa, the young woman who dreamed of becoming a software engineer, was thriving in her new role as a junior developer. Thanks to the coding bootcamp Maya had sponsored, Rosa had earned certifications that opened doors she'd thought were permanently closed. Now she sat at a desk on the same floor where she used to mop floors, typing lines of code with confidence. Every time Maya passed her workstation, she couldn't help but smile. This was what progress looked like. The older man, who had shared his story of working 2 jobs to support his family, also found relief. With higher wages and access to benefits, he no longer needed his second job. Instead, he spent more time with his daughter, cheering her on as she prepared for graduation. When Maya ran into him one night, he pulled her aside to thank her, not for the raise, but for giving him back his life. "I didn't realize how much I'd been missing until things got better," he said, his eyes glistening. "Thank you for seeing us." Maya nodded, though her heart swelled with both pride and humility. She hadn't done this alone. Change only happened because people believed in it, and because they were willing to fight for it. From janitors advocating for safer equipment to managers rethinking outdated policies, everyone played a part in reshaping Apex Tech's culture. Maya's undercover journey had sparked the fire, but it was the collective effort of the entire team that kept it burning. To celebrate the 1-year anniversary of Apex Together, Maya organized a gala unlike anything the company had ever hosted. Instead of glitzy speeches and award ceremonies, the event focused on storytelling. Employees from all levels of the organization took the stage to share their experiences, both the struggles they'd faced and the victories they'd achieved. One janitor recounted how learning basic computer skills through a company-sponsored program helped him reconnect with his kids, who loved playing video games together. A supervisor admitted she'd underestimated her team's potential and thanked them for teaching her the importance of empathy. And Rosa stood tall, describing how her dream of becoming a coder finally came true. As the evening drew to a close, Maya stepped onto the stage to deliver a speech. Unlike her usual polished presentations, this one was raw and heartfelt. She began by thanking everyone for their courage and resilience, acknowledging that real change didn't come easily. Then, she reflected on her own journey. From the moment, she decided to go undercover to the lessons she learned along the way. "When I started this experiment, I thought I knew what leadership meant," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I thought being a good CEO meant making smart decisions, hitting targets, and keeping investors happy. But I was wrong. Leadership isn't about titles or numbers, it's about people. It's about listening when someone says they're struggling. It's about standing up when you see injustice. And it's about remembering that we're all human no matter our job description." The crowd erupted into applause, not the polite kind reserved for formal events, but the kind that comes from deep respect and admiration. Maya scanned the room, locking eyes with Rosa, the older man, and countless others whose lives had changed over the past year. For the first time in a long time, she felt truly connected to her team, to her purpose, and to herself. After the gala, Maya returned to her office, exhausted but content. As she gazed out the window at the city skyline, she reflected on how far she'd come. Going undercover had been risky, even reckless, but it had taught her invaluable lessons. She learned that leadership wasn't about having all the answers. It was about asking the right questions. That success wasn't measured by profits alone, but by the impact you had on others' lives. And that sometimes the hardest truths were the ones worth uncovering. In the weeks that followed, Maya continued championing equality, not just within Apex Tech, but across industries. She partnered with other companies to share best practices for supporting frontline workers. She spoke at conferences, urging leaders to step outside their comfort zones and listen to the voices they often overlooked. And she remained committed to learning, knowing that growth was a lifelong process. As for Apex Tech, the transformation continued. New programs were introduced to help employees pursue education and training. Diversity initiatives expanded to ensure representation at every level of the organization, and the bond between coworkers grew stronger, built on mutual respect and understanding. Looking back, Maya realized her undercover journey had changed her in ways she never expected. She went in hoping to uncover problems. She came out discovering solutions. She entered as a CEO searching for answers. She emerged as a leader driven by compassion. Most importantly, she proved that no matter how high you climbed, you could always find your way back to the ground, and to the people who mattered most. And so, as Maya turned off the lights in her office and headed home, she carried with her not just the weight of responsibility, but the warmth of hope. Hope that tomorrow would bring new opportunities, new connections, and new ways to make the world a little fairer, a little kinder. Because if there was one thing she'd learned, it was this: when you lift others up, you rise higher than you ever imagined possible.